Good evening, everyone. Welcome to NTD Tonight. I'm David Zhang. Here is a preview of some of today's top stories. Arctic-like conditions blanket major cities across the U.S. More on the damages, new records, and forecast. Trump wins Iowa's GOP nomination. What are analysts and Iowa's governor saying? Convicted killer Alex Murdaugh is back in court. Why are he and his lawyer pushing for a new double murder trial? Major cities on the East Coast broke a snow drought on Tuesday. Other parts of the U.S. faced low temperatures that closed the schools, cut power, and likely contributed to deaths.
Storms and frigid temperatures affected everything from air travel to NFL playoff games to Iowa's presidential caucuses. According to the National Weather Service, New York City's Central Park recorded more than an inch of snow on a single day for the first time since 2022. Philadelphia also ended its 715-day streak without snow.
I was hoping for more. I could have done with a snow day. But it's great. I mean, snow is always nice.
A little over 100,000 U.S. homes and businesses were without power, most of them in Oregon, Texas, and Louisiana. The widespread outages started last weekend. Portland General Electric warned that the threat of freezing rain could delay restoration efforts. Schools were closed for students in several major cities. At least 4 people in the Portland area died, including 2 people from suspected hypothermia. Another man was killed after a tree fell on his house, and a woman died in a fire that spread from an open flame stove after a tree fell onto an RV. In Wisconsin, officials said the deaths of 3 homeless people in the Milwaukee area were under investigation, but believe hypothermia was the likely cause. A Kentucky State Police helicopter rescued 4 campers stranded atop Courthouse Rock in the Red River Gorge area on Monday. They said it was one of the most dangerous rescues ever attempted in the gorge. Freezing rain and sleet are expected to continue across portions of the southeast. In the Pacific Northwest, ice storm warnings were in effect through Wednesday morning. Parts of the Cascades into the northern Rockies could see 15 to 28 inches of snow. Temperatures are expected to moderate midweek, but a new surge of colder air is forecast to drop south over the northern plains and Midwest, reaching the deep south by the end of the week.
Now let's take a look at other top headlines. A resounding victory for former President Trump last night at the Iowa caucuses. Trump won by a landslide, coming in first with 51% of the votes. DeSantis took second with 21%. Haley, 19%. Vivek Ramaswamy dropped out of the presidential race after garnering only 8% of the votes. The big win solidified Trump's dominance in the GOP party.
He performed well among the constituencies that are well represented in Iowa, among folks who are living in rural communities and are more evangelical in their orientation. He just does remarkably well in those spaces.
Iowa's governor now says she would support Trump if he wins the Republican nomination. She endorsed the Florida Governor DeSantis over Trump before the caucus. This after a war of words between her and Trump in recent months. Here's Governor Kim Reynolds on Fox News last night saying the main objective is to beat President Biden.
I've made it clear that I will. I'm a Republican, and, all of the candidates running are going to be better than what we have.
All the stuff he said about
you? Well, because, we've got to win. We are a resilient people. This country is in trouble. Look at the southern border.
Attention now turns to New Hampshire, where Nikki Haley is within single digits of Trump. Both Haley and DeSantis have to distinguish themselves there, and South Carolina to take a long shot at the party's nomination. Donald Trump is back in a New York courthouse this morning for his second E. Jean Carroll defamation trial, just 12 hours after his historical win in Iowa. Trump wrote in Truth Social early this morning that he would, quote, fight against a fake case from a woman I have never met, seen, or touched. He called the trial election interference. Magazine writer Carroll accused Trump of sexual assault in the 90s. She also alleges Trump defamed her after she made the allegations public. Last year, a jury found Trump liable for the accusations. The second trial, starting today, focuses on the comments Trump made before and after the first trial. Cameras reportedly weren't allowed in the courthouse. This comes as attorney Joseph Tacopina announced he will no longer represent Trump in the E. Jean Carroll trial starting today. A Trump spokesman commented saying the former president still has the most experienced and qualified legal team ever assembled. Global leaders are at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland this week. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with the Ukraine's president in Davos. President Vladimir Zelenskyy is headlining the first full day of the World Economic Forum's annual meeting. Among today's speakers was European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. She says the West must continue to empower Ukraine's resistance to Russia's aggression.
Ukrainians need predictable financing throughout 2024 and beyond.
Over in China, about 1,000 people are now trapped in a holiday village in China's western Xinjiang. Heavy snow hit the region, setting off avalanches, cutting off road access to the outside world for several days. Rescue work is underway and some tourists have been lifted to safety by helicopters. Chinese state media hasn't reported any injuries. Clearing the snow remains a daunting task. The snow in some parts of the area is over 20 feet deep and is higher than the snow clearing equipment. And in more China news, Beijing is dialing up pressure on two Southeast Asian countries after they congratulated Taiwan's new president. Beijing framed the election as Taiwan's choice between peace and war. So what will be its next step? Taiwan's Defense Ministry weighs in tonight at 9:30 on NTD's China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer. Attorney and convicted killer Alex Murdaugh is back in court today for a hearing related to his push for a new double murder trial. NTD's Christina Corona has more on the story.
Alex Murdaugh, who is convicted of murdering his wife Maggie and youngest son Paul in 2021, appeared at the Richland County Courthouse for a pre-trial public status hearing Tuesday. Murdaugh received 2 consecutive life sentences in March 2023, following a 6-week trial. His lawyers argue that Colleton County Clerk Becky Hill engaged in jury tampering before they found Murdaugh guilty of the double murder. They claim that she influenced the jurors by telling them not to believe his testimony and pressuring them to reach a guilty verdict.
We've argued that their showing in their motion for a new trial is insufficient based on the case law for an evidentiary hearing because there is on its face no sufficient allegation of prejudice.
Former South Carolina Supreme Court Justice Jean Toll decided the defense needs to prove that Becky Hill treated Murdaugh's case unfairly.
I have set an evidentiary hearing because I felt like we had to have some brackets on the time we will spend on this matter.
Toll mentioned that she won't inquire about various allegations against Hill, such as misusing public funds and plagiarism in her book on the Murdaugh case. Tuesday's conference comes ahead of Murdaugh's hearing on January 29th. Murdaugh is currently serving life imprisonment without parole. Christina Corona, NTD News.
The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration initiated a groundbreaking move towards standardizing anti-impaired driving tech in new cars. Their goal is to save lives by preventing drunk driving. NTD's Stephanie Sikal tells us more.
Federal regulators led by National Highway Traffic Safety Administration are taking the initial steps to set a standard for integrating technology in new cars aimed at preventing drunk and impaired driving. Acting Administrator Ann Carlson emphasized the preventability of such crashes, and the agency's advance notice of proposed rulemaking signifies the early phase in creating federal regulations. Technologies in development include breath and touch sensors and eye monitoring cameras. Mothers Against Drunk Driving supports the initiative urgently, highlighting human impact. The Alliance for Automotive Innovation, representing automakers, is reviewing the announcement. In 2021, drunk driving crashes led to over 13,000 fatalities. Promoting the bipartisan infrastructure law to mandate NHTSA to establish a federal standard for new vehicles. incorporating reasonable and practicable technology to curb such incidents and reduce casualties. Stephanie Sikal, NTD News.
We'll take a short break now, everybody, but here's a look at what we have for you when we come back. A California state lawmaker wants to crack down on child abuse content created by AI. This comes amid a push to hold big tech accountable for content on their platforms. A candidate running for Los Angeles district attorney is demanding the current DA's chief of staff to step down. More on his reasons. Equipped with a pen, a father sets out on a mission fueled by love. He writes books for his daughter to introduce her to stories from their Chinese heritage. Those stories and more coming up on NTD Tonight. Welcome back to NTD Tonight. I'm your host, David Zhang. With AI being able to produce a visual content, one lawmaker wants to crack down on child abuse material, even if it's created by AI. NTD's David Lam reports.
In a move to protect children, a lawmaker from Silicon Valley wants to make it illegal to produce child abuse content with AI, adding AI-generated content to the list of media prohibited to contain sexual content of a minor. AB 1831 was introduced by Assemblymember Mark Berman and would update California's penal code to criminalize the production, distribution, or possession of such material, whether real or fictitious. Berman said, according to Politico, AI-generated content depicting minors still relies on scraping information and images from real sexual abuse material and can lead to real-life abuse of children. The bill could reportedly open up a new channel of complaints against social media companies, currently facing criticisms that they don't do enough to eradicate harmful material from their websites. In only one quarter last year, Facebook and Instagram sent over 7.5 million reports of child sexual abuse material to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Lawmakers in 2023 were trying to hold big tech firms accountable for abusive material found on their platforms. However, some organizations like the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, warn that similar laws may prompt companies to, quote, over-censor their users to reduce their exposure to any legal liability. David Lam, NTD News, California.
A candidate running against the district attorney in Los Angeles is demanding that the DA's chief of staff step down. He says they are enacting pro-criminal policies that put criminals before victims.
Nathan Hochman, candidate for Los Angeles County District Attorney and a former federal prosecutor, held a news conference on Tuesday, calling out the current DA, George Gascon, for his leniency on crime. Hochman demands that Gascon terminate his chief of staff, former public defender Tiffany Blacknell, who starts working in his office Tuesday.
Tiffany Blacknell, for her entire career, was not a prosecutor, but a deputy public defender representing criminals. And a couple years ago, she actually said publicly that the police are barbarians. They're an occupying army. And that actually wore a T-shirt that says the police are trained to kill us. I believe that sends the absolute wrong message to his own prosecutors, the over 900 people who work for George Gascon.
Since Gascon was elected as DA in 2020, he has been criticized for his soft approach to prosecuting criminals.
We have situations where George Gascon sought to get rid of the 3 strikes law. This is going after the most dangerous people in the system, people who have committed and been convicted of 2 violent crimes, now have committed a 3rd violent crime, and George Gascon came out with a policy refusing to charge that 3rd violent crime as a 3rd strike, which would basically give a very long sentence to that criminal.
Gascon has also been a target of many lawsuits. One of the most notable ones is related to the death of 2 El Monte police officers. Family members of the fallen police officers sued the DA and the probation department for neglecting their responsibilities. They alleged that the officials did not properly handle the convicted felon who shot and killed the officers on duty in 2022. According to Hochman, by appointing Blacknell, they will work together to enact pro-criminal policies.
I am offended that George Gascon has basically sent these messages to his people, law enforcement, and the public that he stands more for criminals than he does for victims or the public.
Gascon also faced a recall in 2022, but it failed due to a lack of signatures.
Police are searching for a suspect wanted for stealing thousands of dollars worth of items from Target stores across Southern California. NTD's Christina Corona has more on the story.
Surveillance footage from the Irvine Police Department shows the man calmly walking into a Target store, looking around, then snatching an iPad from a Target employee and running away. The worker is seen running after the man, but he evades capture. Irvine PD initially alerted the public about the suspected serial thief in October. The suspect has been known to grab iPads before sprinting out of Target stores. Police said the suspect is responsible for stealing at least $39,000 worth of merchandise so far. The specific store locations have not been disclosed. Anyone with information is urged to contact the Irvine Police Department. Christina Corona, NTD News.
A father in California wanted his Chinese-American daughter to be able to see herself reflected in the children's books that he read to her. While searching for books, he found a lack of representation. So instead, he turned to writing his own children's book. NTD's Helen Billings has the story.
Kwong Lee wanted to read his daughter's stories that reflected his Chinese heritage and featured Chinese girls as positive role models. When he couldn't find any, he set out on a mission with love to create a book for his daughter called May and the Monkey King.
When I was growing up, when I watched TV and I watched movies and read books, I really didn't see Chinese people in those stories. And I hope that with this book, she sees that representation of a Chinese girl looking back at her at the media she consumes. And so, yeah, I want her to be proud of who she is. I want her to be proud that she's a Chinese person.
Inspired by his daughter, the book features a 6-year-old Chinese girl named May and the ancient Chinese myth, the Monkey King. In the book, the Monkey King takes May on a journey through ancient China. After entering a magic door in Chinatown, the story takes the reader on a fun adventure while learning some valuable lessons. With each page, a Chinese character is included for children to learn.
I wrote the book for her originally, and so when the first time I got a physical copy of the book from the printer and read her the book, she smiled and said, "Hey, Daddy, can you read that to me again?" So that really warmed my heart.
Mr. Lee moved to the United States from Taiwan when he was 2 years old. He runs a film company that makes videos and animations. His friend Ronnie Ullman, a San Francisco artist, did the illustrations for the book, which drew influence from Pixar and comic books. For Mr. Lee, writing the book for his daughter was more than a sharing experience. It also helped him reconnect with his culture.
The book that I learned to read Chinese with is Shioji, which is Journey to the West, which is this very iconic Chinese myth that features the Monkey King. And so when I started writing about the Monkey King as a character in my own book, it was kind of a full circle moment for me, reading these legends when I was a kid and then actually writing it into a book of my own. So that was a really nice moment.
Mr. Lee said he wants to continue May's adventures in ancient China with future books. But for now, you can find his book at mayandthemonkeyking.com or Amazon. In Alameda, California, NTD News, Helen Billings.
Switching gears to sports, NTD's Tyler Castile has a recap of Monday Night Football matchups.
The Buffalo Bills faced off against the Pittsburgh Steelers a day later as originally scheduled, but it was no difference as the snow had no effect on the Bills and their victory against the Steelers. Bills quarterback Josh Allen threw for 3 touchdown passes. He also had a career-high rushing touchdown of 52 yards, a pure domination effort from the home team. During the game, the Bills were up 21-0 before the Steelers even had a taste of scoring. Even after the Steelers scored 2 touchdowns and a field goal, the Bills still did not let go of the gas as they added another touchdown and another field goal to leave the Steelers in the dust. The Bills will advance to the next round of the playoffs to face off against Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers just embarrassed the Philadelphia Eagles in a 32-9 playoff win. Yes, the Eagles. The same Eagles that made it to the Super Bowl last year, but didn't even score double digits in last night's game. This is just shocking, as not even 2 months ago, the Eagles were first in the league, which then resulted in the final bunch of games to be lost. On top of that, they lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who just lost Tom Brady to retirement and had to rely on Baker Mayfield to drop not 1, not 2, but 3 touchdowns against them. And not only that, according to multiple reports, 6-time All-Pro and future Hall of Fame center for the Eagles, Jason Kelce, brother of Travis Kelce, is also planning to retire. The Bucs will play the Detroit Lions in the second round, as the Lions have won their first playoff game in over 20 years though. Over here, we have mentioned Brock Purdy and his rise to fame in the NFL, but let's take a step below the NFL and let's look at college football. Chubba Purdy, Brock's younger brother, announced his transfer from Nebraska to California, where he will attend San Jose State University. When it was announced that he was going through the transfer portal, teams were lined up to sign the younger Purdy. It was announced that Cal offered younger Purdy a scholarship, and that Purdy himself visited multiple schools here in California. However, San Jose State as the destination could be for plenty of reasons, such as the school's rise in the Mountain West Division and gaining a new athletic training facility. Or it could simply be for family reasons, as now the two Purdys are now here in the Bay Area.
That's all we've got for you tonight. We would like you to join us again on NTD Tonight every weekday at 9 p.m. I'm David Zhang. Have a wonderful evening.